In this video, we will ask about the relationship between ethics and economics, taking a historical perspective. This time, I will use the metaphor of a marriage. Although economics is a relative new academic discipline which is usually traced back to the inquiry into the nature and causes of a wealth of nations, short wealth of nations, of Adam Smith, 1776, economic thought is much longer and goes back to ancient times. It was Xenophon, 5 till 3rd century BC, who used for the first time the word oeconomicus. Oikos, Rous, Nomeus, manager, as the art of managing one's own house. Ethical and economic questions were interwoven in a fruitful way, and so economics and ethics could be compared to a good marriage. Let us look at some examples of this union in ancient and medieval times, focusing on Plato, Aristotle, and St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. Plato, 427–347 BC, used his philosophical approach to think about the political and economic structure of a state. The scope of the state was to allow each person and the whole state to flourish close to the ideal state. The economic order and rules should serve this goal. Therefore, it should be autarchical, independent. There should be no private property of land. People rent it only. And no profit which leads to inequalities in the society. Each person should do their part in the society according to their place and competences in the society. This was visible in his class stratification idea of a state, present in republic and absent in laws. Plato's disciple was Aristotle. He differentiated between Chremastica, oriented on making money, which was for him only an instrument to acquire goods, and oeconomia, focused on producing wealth. Only the latter is ethical and so may lead to Eudaimonia. So, there's something we can learn from Aristotle in modern times of coronavirus. Aristotle wouldn't approve of the rise of financial capital, Chremastica, but would advise investments in health systems, oeconomia. St. Augustine, 354–430, Anno Domini, incorporates the ideas of Christianity to his concept of the state. We find in his Civitas Dei condemnation of slavery and the importance of private property. Furthermore, he stresses the dignity of labor, which is the duty of each person, the source of wealth, which is a benediction. However, what is more than necessary should be given away. Also, for St. Thomas Aquinas' 13th century, economic activity couldn't be separated from ethics. Economic behavior should correspond with ethical principles in order to bring the person to achieve his ultimate goal. Ethics helps him to make statements about the right economy. The price is just when it corresponds with the value of the object, and both parties should agree to it. Similarly, the wage should be commensurate with the merits, which depends on the effort and time performance of the work, and quality and production value. It should also preserve the dignity of the employee and enable the employee to meet the needs of the entire family. Aquinas wouldn't accept paying of women of Asia sewing our jeans than she needs for their life, with a huge discrepancy between her payment and a suitable wage. Similarly, like Aristotle, he refused interest for lending money because there's no merit in the person to own money. However, he recognizes the risks of lending person, so it was in some cases just for the debtor to cover the problems in the union between economics and ethics started in modern times. The economic spouse in the marriage got bored with ethics and was primarily focused his interest. This can be visualized by mercantilism that is too wide to be summarized in one word. It unifies a vast group of thinkers who share the idea about economic policy, the activity of the state with the scope of rising prosperity. According to them, the state should make the country prosperous in an economic sense, which was identified with a positive trade balance. The instruments of the policy were subordinated to the scope without many thoughts about the social situations of people and the state of other countries. A pursuit of such policy without violating the interests of other countries wasn't possible. Some thinkers such as Thomas More, 16th century, thought that such a policy is not just and developed an alternative. His Utopia 1516 was an alternative program which put the human being and society into the first place. The lack of private property, monetary economy, and lack of social classes should help to maintain equality among people. Furthermore, people should work 6 hours per day and the production should be organized collectively and shared according to needs. Physiocrats were critical towards mercantilism and searched for another order which should be grounded on natural law and therefore on freedom, laissez-faire, laissez-aller, and propriety. A focus on private interest was not considered something negative. There's a belief that liberty, freedom will automatically cause benefit to individual and the society. The classic period of economic thought, which starts with Adam Smith, 18th century, is a preparation for the divorce between economics and ethics. And in fact, Adam Smith publishes his two works separately, the theory of moral sentiments, an ethical one, and inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations, his foundational economic work. Although Smith separated his thought into two segments, ethical and economic, there are still many ethical considerations in the second work too. This trend was reinforced by neoclassical economists, enhancing the value of freedom, accentuating that in human nature there's egoism and focus on maximization of utility. Economics was no longer interested in its rejected spouse, ethics, and left no space for any more ethical consideration. However, in the late 1980s, some new attempts were made by an economic spouse to introduce once again ethical considerations into his economic thought. Not only have strict heterodox economists tried to reintegrate ethics and economics, for example in humanistic ecological economics, but also some Nobel Prize economists like Amartya Sen. These attempts may be considered as trials of reunification, putting back to economics ethical questions such as fairness and human rights. In summary, we can tell that economics and ethics are like two married persons who formed one married couple. In ancient times, it remained so, with some turbulences caused by mercantilism and to some extent physiocracy, till classical times. The problems between them, which could be summarized at How to Be a Rich Man, almost like Rev Tevier in the musical Fiddler on the Roof, and how to lead a good life ethics led eventually to the state in which they were locked in two separated rooms, in two works of Adam Smith. In neoclassical times, they were divorced or separated for a long time, the dominance of neoclassicism, in two different disciplines. The economic spouse especially shut itself in and didn't want to let the aesthetic spouse enter. But finally, we come to the part of the economic spouse, the heterodox part, that maybe it is not such a bad idea to be reunited with the ethic spouse.